Welcome to George Mason University's Studio A. My name is Rick Davis, and today our guest is Michael Kang, an independent filmmaker whose film The Motel premiered at the Sundance Festival. Please welcome Michael Kang. Thanks for being here. So, Michael, have you always wanted to be a filmmaker, or is this an evolutionary stage?
Well, I was always interested in theater and film, mainly because I've always been kind of one of those artsy-fartsy creative types, and I
Right.
dabbled in a lot of things, and I was kind of mediocre at everything. But in theater and film, you can do all of them together, and
Yeah.
nobody will notice that you're only mediocre at each individual.
Right, exactly, yeah. So you started out actually working in the theater or studying theater?
Well, I went to school for writing, a dramatic writing program, which in NYU, which was the only program I could find that did both film and theater. You were doing playwriting
Yeah.
and screenwriting, and I always vacillated between the two and was never fully committing to either one. And then when I got out of school, it wasn't until then that I started to focus more on doing just
Then
film.
before you directed your first film, you had some career as a performer, I understand?
Yeah. I did very bad performance art in downtown experimental theater. Used to pull my pants down on stage and do that kind of thing. I was very much attracted to experimental theater, but when I was working in that, I had done a lot of lighting design and stage managing, and I realized that like the veterans of experimental theater, they do it because they love it, not because they can actually make a career out of
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, like
Yeah.
people who are like 50, 60 years old having a temp job in the day and doing wacky theater at night.
Yeah, for 20 people. often,
Yeah, for 20 people or less, and I realized that that probably wasn't the path I wanted to take, or
So
I had the resilience for.
When you had that discovery, how did you then put that into action? How did you get into the film?
Well, like I said, in the program, I had learned screenwriting, and basically, you know, I'd done photography and I'd done some acting, and I used to draw. I actually wanted to be a comic book artist at first, and so the transitioning to film was fairly easy in that, just at least conceptually, and I took one film production class just to verify that a moving camera is the same as a still camera, but it's just taking 24 pictures every second
Right.
instead of just one still frame. And once I did that, then I just started directing. I just went out and produced my own short films and learned basically production by making films.
Sounds like you had a lot of tools, though, to bring to the table between writing and some technical design work and visual art.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of my experiences being behind the scenes doing lighting design actually taught me a lot about storytelling. You know, I had learned a lot. Actually, one of my role models at the time from that era was Denise Stoklos, who's a Brazilian performance artist who she had studied mime for 8 years, had a journalism degree, and just had so much control and brought so many different elements into her performance. It really was kind of how I wanted to approach filmmaking too, was like taking all the different sides of stuff. And in terms of production, because I had spent many years lugging very heavy equipment around, I realized that I didn't want to make anybody lug heavy stuff around without a real reason, and so it made me very pragmatic about how to approach filmmaking.
So when you set out to make your own short pieces, I guess to build a portfolio, more or less, or?
Yeah, I mean, mainly the first one was to learn everything about production and just figure it out. And so my first short film was called The Waiter Tomorrow, which was a spoof on John Woo films. Like John Woo at the time was just crossing over from Hong Kong, and when I saw Hard Boiled in the theaters, it totally like changed everything for me. Actually, that was a pivotal moment for me because it was the first time I saw Asians on screen, not in like a period piece or a martial arts piece, but just telling a complete action film.
Living
Just
lives,
just
right,
living
yeah.
lives in kind of contemporary life, and it was just an action genre film, and it made me realize, oh, you know, we can tell any kind of story as an Asian, and so that was kind of an homage to him. It was about two sushi waiters in a restaurant who have a gun battle with the customers, and so I learned everything about film production in 3 days because we had like a fight choreographer, you know, ballistics team, special effects, makeup. You know, I tried to pack it with as much
Fantastic.
stuff just to get a working knowledge, and so then. Yeah, and also just figure out who's a gaffer and what's a key grip, what is that, and who are these people that you see going on the credit scroll.
And then what did you do with that project once it was?
You know, I started submitting it around to festivals, and it got a fair amount of play. It actually was a great way to just define me as a filmmaker, because until that point I was just, people thought of me as a writer, if either a writer or a lighting designer, and I didn't really want to be known as a lighting designer. So, but I realized that in order to direct, you know, nobody's going to just come around and give you a script and say, go out there and direct this film. You have to just start directing and to define your own role.
What's your favorite part of the process at this point?
You know, the collaborative aspect of film is what, I mean, both film and theater. What I love about film is that it's one of those mediums where you need a lot of people, and everybody has to put a lot into it. And if you change even one down to like an intern or a PA, if you swap that person out, you could have a completely different final work.
Yes, exactly.
It's something like, I don't believe in the auteur theory. I believe like it is about kind of this communal kind of creation.
And how much of your own vision do you impart to the whole company before you launch or during the process?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, there's sort of that sense of creating a communal ensemble. Does that come from you, or does it come from the synthesis of everybody? Or?
I think, I mean, I think I brought a lot of theater to film production, and you know, I actually never worked on anybody else's set before my own.
Wow,
so
that's neat.
I didn't really know how a set was supposed to be run. I just figured I'd just do it the way I want it to be done. And so, you know, we would do, in the mornings, we'd have psych circles and we'd play theater games and stuff. I just felt like that's a good way to get the crew to bond. And, and I think it changed, on the Motel, it definitely changed the way that a lot of, you know, crew people can tend to kind of think about, you know, hours, meal penalties, you know, things that, you know, and think of it as just a gig, and they're just hauling cable. And I think that by kind of setting the tone of saying, no, this is actually a creative process that we're all taking part in, and your input is important, that that it created this incredible bond, and I like setting that tone for all my films.
That sounds terrific, like an ensemble.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, let's see if our students have any questions. Who would like to be the first? Yes.
Hi, my name is Alex Peterson. What kind of steps did you have to take to get your film in Sundance?
It was, you know, I got very lucky. One of the first thing is that most people know Sundance is just the film festival, but really the heart of the Sundance Institute is the Sundance Labs, which happen twice a year. They do a writer's lab and they do a filmmaker's lab. And basically they just foster young talent, people who have a script or have a project that they bring in mentors, people who've been in the business for 20, 30 years to come in and give you advice and work with you on your script or work with you on the scenes. And that I had actually read Filmmaker magazine one year, and just flipping through it, every year they put out the 25 new faces of independent cinema or something. And one of my friends from high school was in the article, and she put her email at the bottom, and so I was just like, hey, do you remember me from physics class? And she was like, yeah, totally. And then she actually had done the Sundance Labs, and she read my script and gave it to them, and from there it just snowballed, and kind of, you know, it's not a guarantee that your film will make it into the festival from there, but they were very aware of my project from early stages, and very supportive from there, from
It's a great story.
Just the labs.
Any another question? Yes.
I'm Corwin Ron Case. What were you feeling as you saw your film at Sundance?
Sheer terror. That was actually probably the most stressful, because we had not shown the film to anybody in the audience. Of course I was worried whether people would like it, but more so than that, we hadn't shown it to anybody in the crew or the cast. And they were seeing it for the first times at Sundance. And for me, it was such an amazing experience doing the film, and I wanted the film to reflect that. And I was afraid that those people, the people that I cared about that had put so much work into it, were going to end up being really disappointed. But fortunately, they liked it, and it all turned out good. But actually at that night at the after party, I ended up passing out at the bar, like blacking out at the bar, exactly at the end of the party, and they had to carry me out because so much stress had built up.
And fade to black.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've never blacked out before, and that was the first time. I just so much building up to that moment, and then being like, okay, it's done.
Wow, fantastic.
You were really nervous.
Yeah, I was pretty nervous.
Okay, how can we top that? Another question, please.
I got one. Was there ever a time you wanted to stop making films?
There are a lot of times you want to stop making films.
How do you usually overcome it?
I've been really fortunate in that every time I'll be at the end of my rope or feel like this is just not going anywhere, that somehow the universe has thrown me a cookie and just enough to make me go, okay, just keep going a little bit further. It's just right down around this corner, you'll be fine. And then I look around the corner and then there's maybe a cookie way down the street, and then I have to go down there. But yeah, I mean, every time definitely I've thought about it a lot. Like right before I made the Motel. Before we had money to make the Motel. It was just a script, and I'd done the Sundance Labs. It felt like you're supposed to go on and make it, but it didn't seem like it was going to happen. I was like, well, maybe I should go back to grad school or something and just give up on this. And then boom, I actually got rejected by film school, and then I got money to make my movie. So I just said, okay, I guess that's the way I'm supposed to go.
That's a cookie.
Yeah, that was a pretty good cookie.
Good. Another question?
Yes, I have one.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Luke. What is the most ridiculous thing to ever happen on one of your sets?
The production is a big part of production is you have to be able to roll with anything. I mean, if you watch the DVD of my first film, The Motel, there's behind the scenes, and you'll see that there was uncharacteristic torrential downpour for the first few days, and then the hotel that we were shooting in caught on fire. Not by our fault at all. I mean, it was just faulty wiring, but the things like that happen all the time. When I shot West 32nd, which is a crime drama, I wanted to keep it very real. So a lot of the people had lives that were they were coming from that world, and one of our actors actually got arrested the night before he was supposed to start shooting, and so we had to push his schedule around. I mean, you just have to roll with it. Whatever happens, happens.
Well, speaking of the Motel, we actually have a clip from that film, which I'd like to show the audience. I'd like you to set it up a little bit, the premise of the piece and the environment and what led you to
the
it.
Motel is about a 13-year-old boy who's growing up in a dirty motel, and he's basically he has no father, and this man checks in who kind of becomes his surrogate father figure, and maybe not be the most appropriate person. But in this scene, it's really about him and his mother and the tension that exists between the two of them.
Okay, let's watch.
You got a letter. How come you didn't tell me you entered contest?
What? The writing contest. You entered a writing contest.
Oh, the writing contest, yeah.
You got honorable mention.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, could I read it?
I threw away.
You what?
Should not lie to mommy.
I didn't lie.
You lied 2 times today. 哎呀，咁大仲搓媽咪嘅膝頭，叫公公嚟，我要問佢話。You make me upset. You did not tell me you entered contest.
It was just a stupid contest.
Yeah, you're right. Waste of time.
But you said I won.
You did not win. You got honorable mention. That is not winning. That is bad. That is worse than losing. They tell everyone at fancy dinner your name and say, see, this boy is not even good enough to win. You're not even good enough to lose. Let me tell you something. When I was young, there was a man in our village who used to tell stories. All day telling stories. One day, the whole village came to his house and cut out his tongue. Do you want to be like that?
So there's a dinner?
Ay.
Well, there is a lot of information in that one little clip there. I mean, both about that family and about that culture and about that environment. Where to begin? What inspired you to make this movie?
I mean, I think that the heart of it is just my own terrible experiences going through puberty. But I didn't actually grow up in a dirty motel. But I had actually, when I was doing performance art, I was part of this performance group, and one of my fellow performers was writing a short story about his actual upbringing in a dirty motel, and it just seemed like it was a great place to explore all those issues, and so I just spent a couple years writing that script, and it all kind of came out that way. And
I mean, there's an intense family story, an intense family unit, but in a very non-traditional environment, let's say.
Yeah, yeah.
Which allows a lot of intersections with other slices of life.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the mother doesn't come off in a very good light in that scene, but I think ultimately you see everybody in three dimensions, and that as hard as it is for him, she's doing her best to try and raise these two kids in this environment.
Yeah, and it's a very realistic film too. It strikes me visually, and the acting is, you know, it's very low key and very sort of observed.
Yeah, I mean, that, you know, it was taking a cue off of kind of Jim Jarmusch movies, and you know, I when I was sat down to write it, one of the things, like I said, I think very pragmatically, and so I was trying to find an idea that would be very contained. So about 75% of the movie takes place in this motel, and the only thing that wasn't very practical was working with kids. But
Yeah, I
it
was
ended
gonna
up
say,
being actually an advantage, because we didn't burn out the crew. Like normally on independent films, especially now, there's more and more pressure to shoot like insane amounts of hours and do very short schedules. But this, because of child labor laws, we could only shoot a certain amount of time and only a certain amount of days through the week, and so people were well rested throughout the whole thing.
And you had, besides the two kids that were in that clip, who are sort of principals, there was a sort of an ensemble of kids in and around the motel.
There's what we called the American family, which is this family that's just living there kind of long term, and they have a son and daughter, and he's got his sister, and he's got the girl that he likes who works at the Chinese restaurant across the street. And yeah, I actually had never really worked with kids before, but
what was that like?
it actually is easier than working with adults in some ways. With kids, you know, for them, acting or pretending to be somebody else is kind of second nature. Like, they do it every day. They do it in schoolyard, and they completely commit to being, you know, today I'm a cowboy, and that's it. And the key is just to get them to trust you. And so most of our rehearsals were spent just bonding and becoming friends. And, you know, Jeffrey, you know, the deal I made with Jeffrey's mom, who Jeffrey plays Ernest, was that he could do the movie as long as I was the one that had to give him the talk about birds and bees.
Okay. That's a fair trade, I guess. I don't know. How did you cast those child, especially the principal children?
Well, he was the most challenging because, you know, that kind of kid, like we were looking for, you know, a chubby Chinese kid who on one level would come off as kind of, you know, introverted and somewhat, you know, shy, but at the same time has to be free enough to be able to act out the part. And so it took us about 6 months of actively searching, and that's not the kind of kid that comes into an audition either. You know, most of the kids we saw in the first round, like actual casting calls, were kids who'd been doing musical theater, came in with jazz hands, and we were like, this is, you're not the kid. I'm sorry, like this is not the role for you. So we actually I put together street teams where we were going into like parks in Chinatown and talking to kids and like going, hey, you want to be in a movie, which is a very awkward thing to do.
How do you get, speaking of trust, how do you get the...
I mean, it took a lot. I mean, it was really hard to get kids just to audition. And then when there were some kids that were good, just to get them to do callbacks, then there was a whole nother issue with parents going like, what is this? If we were putting on a production of The King and I think they would have understood.
Yeah.
But we were doing an independent film that dealt with sex, and for most of them, they were like, we think we'd rather just send our kid to math camp this summer than do a movie.
Yeah.
We were very fortunate to find Jeffrey, and his mother, actually, her best friend co-wrote The Wedding Banquet.
Oh, fantastic.
So she understood, she understood the film industry on kind of peripheral level. And then secondly, she also understood the value of this education that Jeffrey would get from doing this. Like, you don't get offered a starring movie role every summer, and she said for him to do that for this summer instead of SAT prep is probably so much more important.
Was he trained at all before the film?
No, I mean, he'd done school play. He did like Damn Yankees for his middle school play or something.
Yeah.
But,
playing Thomas Jefferson or something.
I mean,
that's fantastic.
He was great. I mean, he was a really rare find. Like, he's a very confident kid.
Well, it's a great performance.
Yeah, he doesn't come off, you know, he's playing a character who's not the most confident person, but in real life, Jeffrey is amazing. Now he's probably your age.
Cool.
Not your age. Their age.
Yeah. Understood. So another film that we're going to look at today is West 32nd, which is a whole different
Yeah.
animal. I mean, it's sort of an action crime.
No kids.
Yeah, no kids. Yeah. Tell us about that film.
As you said, it's a crime drama. It stars John Cho from Star Trek and Harold and Kumar and Grace Park, who is in Battlestar Galactica and now is in Hawaii Five-0. Yeah, it's a big departure. It deals with the underground crime world of New York in Koreatown, and basically John Cho plays a character who's a lawyer taking on a pro bono case to try and help a kid who's been accused of a murder.
Okay, well, we have a good clip from this. It shows us something, a different part of your style. Let's watch it.
I thought you'd get out once that fight broke out, but you stuck it in there. 씨발, 누가 한국 사람 아니랄까 봐. Jeez. You know what? I could use a guy like you.
Yeah? You do get one phone call.
Shit. You haven't caught it to me yet, man. All right, I'm not gonna bullshit you. I could probably help you out with all this Kevin shit, you know? I like that kid.
Police report makes it out to be a typical gangland murder.
Shit, man, you think you can figure out K-Town from fucking police report?
Think I'd be here if I thought I could?
Let me tell you a thing or two about these gangs. You know, you hear stuff like KP this, Flying Dragons that, you know, all that bullshit, like BTK Born to Kill. There are no fucking gangs, man. That's all fucking fantasy. 야, 니는 뭐 하는 거야? 빨리 안 나가! 안 나가, 이 자식들아! What these street kids don't realize is that we're all working for the same organization.
And you're the go-between?
Yeah, go-between. I like that, man. Yeah, I go between everything. Sometimes I get personally asked to get stuff done.
Like kill someone?
No, fuck no, man. What do they call it? Outsourcing. These big guys are legitimate businessmen. They can't get their hands dirty.
So who ordered the hit on Jin Ho-chan?
Fuck, you watch too much fucking Sopranos. You think there's some Korean John Gotti running around ordering that fucking hit? It's not like that. Koreans are opportunists. They work together. No turf wars, no violence. None of that shit. See, all that shit died down in the 90s when the feds came down on Uncle Benny, the Tongs, the Chinks, the real BTK. And a lot of business opened up. We were there to grab it. It's all business. No violence.
No violence.
Well, there are always exceptions.
And now for something completely different. What a contrast in style and language and tone and in technique.
Yeah, I mean, for me, each time I approach a film, I just don't want to do the same thing over and over again, and I definitely like to challenge myself. I was writing this script at the same time as the Motel script. I actually co-wrote this with a journalist from the Village Voice who had done an expose on Korean gangsters. He had actually followed a guy around for a year, so he had done all the research, and we honed it into a story. And yeah, I've been thinking about this recently. Like, something I noticed about my films is that the place for me is a character. The setting is a character. West 32nd is a character in the film, and it demands to be shot in a certain way, the same way that the Motel was its own character alongside Jeffrey, and even this new film that I'm doing, which is a romantic comedy in Hawaii, that has yet another completely different character to it.
One of the things that struck me in this clip is the sort of the voiceover section where you really do, I mean, we don't see the guys talking, but we really we focus on the environment. So your eye is really drawn to the place.
Yeah.
With the sort of the thoughts happening inside.
There was another indie movie years back that kind of dealt with the same world, the New York Koreatown gangster world, and they never went to 32nd Street, which is the heart of Manhattan, Koreatown, and they never went to Flushing, which is really the real enclave of what's going on up there. And to me, I felt like that they completely missed out on a richness. We were the first film to actually use West 32nd as a backdrop and close down the street.
Wow. So that's, talk about different filming environments between Poughkeepsie with the Motel,
yeah,
right? And the heart of New York.
This was very much a different kind of beast. It was, and the script has a lot of testosterone in it. There's a lot of, that character who's talking to John, played by Jun Kim, Mike, he's got a little posse of gangsters in the movie, and they became a real posse crew, and we would just, on the weekends would just tear up the town and then come back and shoot again on Monday.
Called research.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a great cast as well.
Yeah,
I mean, really
amazing cast.
yeah.
Really amazing cast.
So what was the atmosphere? Must have been very different in those two.
Yeah, I mean,
environments
it
as
was
far as-
well. The bigger challenge for that was, you know, as opposed to working versus kids versus adults on the Motel, this had an international cast. There were the guy who plays Mike, Jun Kim, was an actor in Korea, and up and coming actor in Korea, and John Cho is, you know, Harold from Harold and Kumar.
Yep.
So it was trying to blend those two worlds of like approaches to acting styles that were
Yeah.
very different. And the way that they shoot films in Korea is very different, and so there was a lot of kind of like trying to translate.
But again, that's kind of a theatrical idea where you try to blend ensembles out of disparate.
Yeah, yeah, and most of the, like I said, like that crew, they were real kids from the street. Like we actually
Yeah.
wanted to make it feel like, even though there's kind of movie hyperbole in the film, in the story, the base code of it was all based in trying to be a very real.
Yeah, it's a very glossy movie. It's a very shiny
Yeah,
movie. Isn't
I
it?
felt like
Yeah.
like that was the other thing, is that you know, it needed to be done that way to really show that story, the Koreatown gangster story, kind of like it was very much influenced from contemporary Korean cinema, which is very slick, and you know, it wouldn't be accepted at all if we had done it like I didn't want it to look like a New York independent movie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
we
looks-
eked out as much production value as we
Yeah,
could.
it has a real style to it, which
Yeah.
is, I think, very successful. You mentioned the film that you're shooting in Hawaii, or you've shot in Hawaii.
Yeah, we're
Tying
in
the Knot.
post-production.
Is
Yeah,
the
it's called
title.
Tying the Knot. It stars Ileana Douglas, who I think is a little bit probably out of these people's radars, but she was in the movie Cape Fear.
Oh, yes.
She
Yep.
was the woman who got her cheek bitten off by Robert De Niro. She was in Alive. She was also in Ghost World. I don't know. Anyways, she stars in it as the matriarch of a dysfunctional family of wedding planners, and it's a romantic comedy about one of her daughters who comes back to the islands.
So on it goes for Michael Kang. It's
Yeah, well,
fantastic.
hopefully.
Thank you so much for being here.
Well,
It's been a
thank
real
you.
pleasure.
Yeah.
This is Studio A. Thanks for watching.